the lovely Julie Roginski, Michelle Kinney, JoJo from Jers, and I am Tara Setmayer. We are thrilled to be with you guys today. Michelle and I are dragging a little bit because we were partying it up, as was Julie, in New York City earlier this week because we are Webby Award winners for the Seneca Project, and Julie was gracious enough to join us as a guest. JoJo, actually, I'm kind of jealous, was at the Knicks game on Monday night.
I know.
Which was a crazy
as a long-suffering Knicks fan, I was with her in spirit there, or else JoJo would have been with us too. But we're thrilled to be with you guys and talk about everything that's going on because there's a lot happening up on the Hill, particularly with this budget bill that the Republicans are trying to push through. It's a disaster. And they're getting pushback not only from the Democrats, but within their own party. But we have a great special guest for you guys. We thought, Julie was like, "Do you want Congressman Himes to come on?" We were like, "Absolutely." So let's bring on one of the good guys who's fighting the good fight up there on Capitol Hill, Congressman Jim Himes. Welcome to Over It.
Hey, Tara, thanks for having me. Thank you all, and congratulations on the Webbies. What do I got to do to win one of those?
You got to cut a really good ad, which is what Tara and Michelle did. Which was
yes. So we're out here at the Seneca Project representing women and democracy, and we're fighters, and we're trying to assist the Democrats in these elections and narrative setting because we are not afraid to go toe to toe with MAGA. So. That's what we're here to do for the Seneca Project. But Over It is a different thing. We are in coalition with Joe and Julie and others who are also trying to really just get the message out there to people to understand what's really at stake and why it's so important for us to be involved and to platform other Democrats like yourself who are actually doing the right thing. Because I know it's an uphill battle for you.
Yeah, well, thank you. There's a lot going on and so much we could talk about, but no, thank you. And by the way, thank you for all the Seneca Project stuff. That's amazing. I don't need to tell you that I'm not going to say all of MAGA, but there is a piece of MAGA that says that, women should be doing in the place they were 150 years ago. So thanks for pushing back on that.
Absolutely. And it's all of MAGA. We'll say it.
All of them.
There's no reform, misogyny, and authoritarianism anymore. As far as
Congressman,
or not.
Yeah, I know we don't have you for much time, so I wanted to just get straight to it. You are the ranking member of the House Select Intelligence Committee, which is, I don't even want to know what goes on in your head that we don't know about every night. But I wanted to just talk to you first about the news of this week, which is that Qatar is effectively bribing our president here. And so we need to know, I don't know who's got something on, but there's a reverberation. But what are your thoughts on this? Because you obviously have a very unique perch into Qatar based on your intelligence committee assignment and just not just Qatar, but Saudi and other Middle Eastern authoritarian governments that apparently are feting our president this week and not expecting something for nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. No, and thanks for asking the question. I mean, and it'll get to one of the things I'm so over, and that I won't bury the headline. I'm so over my Republican colleagues here, completely forgetting that half the reason the Congress exists is, we're about making laws, but the other half of the reason we exist is to actually provide a check and a balance on the presidency, right? And I mean, there is nothing. There is not a meme coin that enriches the president in, really ugly ways. There's not a gift, smaller or larger than a 747 that will cause my Republican colleagues to stand up and say, hey, this is enough. And so on the 747, the Qatari 747, and we can talk a little bit about Qatar. They're actually pretty important to arranging the negotiations that get hostages released out of Israel. They're pretty important to us negotiating with the Taliban. Anyway, they're important to us for a bunch of reasons. But, no way should the president of the United States be flying around on a massive piece of equipment that was in the custody of anybody other than the United States Air Force. Because I'll tell you a story. Some of you may remember this, but back in the day when the Soviet Union existed, we built a new embassy in Moscow, and we hired local contractors to, I don't know who thought of that idea, but we built this embassy, which is, not as bigger than a 747, but not much bigger. And we had to tear the whole thing down because it was riddled with listening devices and surveillance and this and that. And, I mean, unless you're going to take every screw and every rivet and every panel out of 47, you're not using a foreign provided. I mean, think about what the president talks about on Air Force One. By the way, where is the president when there's a nuclear attack? One of the options when there is an attack, and you guys will remember that in 9/11, they kept George W. Bush circling over the United States in Air Force One, like in the moments when the president is doing the riskiest and most dangerous stuff, he may be on Air Force One. So obviously bad idea from that standpoint. But then, hey, there is a line in our Constitution, the Emoluments Clause, which says that you don't get to accept gifts from foreign nations. And the president today was saying like, well, we accepted the Statue of Liberty. And I was kind of interested that he said we accepted the Statue of Liberty from France because A, the president's not going to fly around on the Statue of Liberty. But B, when we did that, the Congress took a vote to accept it and had this deliberation about whether France was going to use this to try. Anyway, bananas, absolutely bananas that this president is thinking about taking that 747.
Not to mention the fact that Grover Cleveland didn't put it in his backyard after he left office. It stayed where it was. So thank you so much for joining us. I was just listening to an interview that you gave recently, and I did not know this, but you spent the first 10 years of your life in Peru, which I was completely fascinated by. And then there was a question as to whether or not you should be able to run for president, but Ted Cruz probably has an interesting answer to that one. But you also talked in the interview about being an optimist while recognizing at the same time that we are sliding into authoritarianism. And I was curious about what the first 10 years of your life and the perspective that might have given you. And when you look at the parallels to what's happening here, and then how do you find that optimistic viewpoint when looking at what we're facing right now as a country?
Yeah, great question. And yes, I spent the first 10 years of my life in Lima, Peru, and Bogota, Colombia, and Jojo from Jersey. The next 10 years in Mercer County, New Jersey.
Oh,
so,
where in Mercer County?
Little town called Pennington, New Jersey. Hope
I know it well.
Very well.
I went to school in Princeton. I know it well.
Pennington's a little south. It's you.
I was going to say the North
Jersey.
The North Jersey, the North Jersey Mafia here. I'm from Bergen County.
Like, no idea.
South Jersey.
No idea.
1982, my very first rock concert that my mom let me go to, Bruce Springsteen at the Spectrum.
Course.
So I got a little bit. Don't let this Connecticut exterior fool you.
And can I just say for the record, I'm so glad that you said you're from Central Jersey because there's a big fight
no such thing
on the show about whether it exists. And of course, as somebody from Central Jersey, I know it exists. And I'm glad that
this is very, very controversial cartography on the show. Very, very controversial.
Congressman, is it Taylor ham or pork roll?
So really, I got to answer that right now?
Yes, you're listening intently.
Pork roll on my hoagies.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
That's it. This interview's over.
That's the question and the interview.
It's Taylor ham, and you're from Central Jersey. If you're from South Jersey, maybe pork roll. But because
Julie, you just confirmed it. That was a South Jersey answer.
All
right. We'll let you go. We'll let you think. We'll let that
slide. For these North Jersey Short Hills swells. Yeah.
We'll let that slide. We'll let it slide. But back to more important things.
To your question, no, it's a great question because first 10 years of my life, I grew up with national in places like, back in the 70s and 80s, when we're talking about here, you didn't have a lot of democracies down there. There were a lot of dictatorships. The military would regularly take over countries. And so I grew up thinking it was normal to have National Guardsmen with, assault rifles standing on street corners and, tanks out in front of the Supreme Court in Bogota and that sort of thing. And then, I was pretty young at the time, but you peel back the layers and you see that in authoritarian societies, corporations, corporate leaders, do all they can to get in good with whoever the autocrat is at the moment. Oftentimes, by the way, church leaders will make an effort to try to get in with the My point is that societal leaders spend a lot of time, trying to get close to the leader. And, this takes me back to Inauguration Day. I was actually in the, they had to do it inside because it was so cold. And I'll never forget the image, sitting there in the rotunda in the Capitol. And there is like 9 billionaires, Mark Zuckerberg, and oh my God, Elon Musk, and they're all being lined up and displayed for the world to see. So, it does sometimes feel like we're, like some of this stuff feels like what I experienced in that era in South America.
Well, that's the optimism part, though. I was curious, since you say you're an eternal optimist to a fault, can you give us and our audience a little bit of maybe hope hopefulness or something?
Yeah, no, I will. And let's stay with Latin America for a second. I mean, and I said this all through Trump's first term. We're a country of strong institutions, and those institutions are the courts, which have stood up. The Supreme Court has now found 3 or 4 times against Donald Trump. Trump appointed judges are finding against Donald Trump. Reagan appointed judges are finding against Donald Trump. And though he sort of danced around the margins and said, oh, maybe we should impeach judges and everything, he has yet to blatantly, he's dragged his feet and this and that, but he has yet to blatantly say, I'm just not following the ruling of the court, which, by the way, when that happens, that's the moment where there's like National Guardsmen on corners, right? Because that's the moment when the American people, which is another institution in this country, need to say, sorry, we're not going to live in an autocracy. So look, our press, though too many of them, I'm looking at you, Mr. Bezos, have bent the knee. This guy who runs the Los Angeles Times, who apparently is in Saudi Arabia with the president right now, too many of them have bent the knee. There's still an awful lot of good journalism. And by the way, here we are talking to each other in what the new journalism is. There's an awful lot of,
Amen.
21st century media raising hell, as we're kind of doing right now. So no, I look, it's a dangerous moment, but we have very strong institutions. This is not Peru of 1970. The last thing I'll mention on this point is that, right where I'm sitting right now, the Republicans are slashing Medicaid, and American people are starting to wake up to that. They're really waking up to the tariff catastrophe, because a lot of people have 401ks and IRAs, and people are going to start to see inflation. So what's going to happen is the president's numbers are going to continue dropping. Why is that important? Because now, remember the first thing I said, now all of a sudden my Republican colleagues are saying, oh man, if I stick with this guy, if I'm 100% for him, I'm going to lose my next election. We're not there yet, but we're going to get there. That's my source of optimism.
So it's interesting that you say that, because we often say that as we're fighting this, and as I always say that the collective righteous anger of the American people can make the difference, and that people should not get exhausted. That's part of the playbook of the other side. We've seen this before. They want to exhaust us with overwhelming us with all of this insanity that's going on, and the unethical, dubiously legal things that they're doing, and just undermining so many democratic institutions. Now, I worked in Capitol Hill for 7 years as a comms director. I was on the other side at the time. I have since been liberated. And so I know how it works up there. And I've started to see how the Republicans like Mike Lawler and others who are trying to walk this MAGA fine line, which, like I said earlier, there really is no lukewarm MAGA at this point. But they're seeing what these budgets and what these cuts and cutting these agencies and what they're doing, how it's impacting their constituents. And this bill that they're trying to push through, this big, beautiful bill, is really, if this gets passed, it could fundamentally change the way a lot of Americans receive their services, their benefits, and a lot of those people are MAGAs in red states. How do you see the negotiations going on right now? Do you think that Mike Johnson's going to be able to pull everybody together again? Or do you think that there's a possibility to stop this? Because I think people yelling at their members on both the left and the right at town halls is having an impact.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And yeah, I there's more than a possibility that they fail, right? They've got a math problem they can't solve, right? They said they're going to take $880 billion out of Medicaid over 10 years. So that's about $88 billion a year. That's about a quarter of federal government spending in Medicaid. And they're trying to do this tap dance and say, oh, we can do that with waste, fraud, and abuse. Baloney. They cannot do it, right? And so remember, there's 80 million Americans, 80 million that get their health insurance from Medicaid. So it doesn't work this way, but you're talking about 20 million. That's, a quarter of the total number of Americans covered, but you're talking about 20 million people who are at risk of losing their health insurance. And you just need to say that. And people are going to say, hell no, hell no. And by the way, it's not just, sometimes Americans think like, okay, Medicaid, that's for lower income people. I don't need to worry about that. Medicaid is also what keeps an awful lot of grandmas and grandpas, in nursing homes when they run out of assets, which they do, because nursing homes cost $300, $400 a day. So this is going to, and by the way, we haven't even gotten into food stamps, right? Food stamps provide nutrition to an awful lot of children. And
also helps the farmers who produce those crops for that, which is something else that they're not messaging well, that Donald Trump is the first person not only to betray our veterans, but also to betray our farmers, because all of these trade deals and programs like this, our farmers rely on them.
And
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I should make that case more often, but I don't have a lot of farms in Fairfield County, Connecticut, that aren't like arugula farms run by, retired bankers and stuff. But no, you're absolutely right about that. They're not selling anything to China right now because of the tariffs. And now you're going to turn around and just, mess with the program that does allow them to provide food to the federal government, which goes on to schools for free lunch programs and that kind of thing. So anyway, the larger point is that they are trying to deliver a devastating blow to precisely the folks that Donald Trump says he's standing up for, the forgotten American, the blue collar guy and stuff, and rural areas, right? All of us live in places where I bet you we all live in a place where if something really bad happens, we're 15 minutes from a hospital. Go to some of these red states in rural areas, you can be 3 hours from a hospital, and that hospital is going to close if you cut Medicaid. So yeah, Tara, I think success is very, well, I shouldn't call it success, but and by the way, then you got folks like Chip Roy, really hardcore Freedom Caucus conservatives saying, oh, well, all of that isn't enough. Right. We want to cut more. And so again, I think they have a math problem they just can't solve. And I hope that's the case, because the devastation that will be visited just by the Medicaid that we've been talking about right now would really be horrendous.
Well, therein lies a question that I have just about everything that's going on. And there's so many people who are struggling, and there's even more who are about to struggle in ways I don't think that anyone is really anticipating, or people we know, but I think the average American doesn't. So I ask this of you, not just as a fellow Democrat, but as an American. How do we fight back? Because I think we know how to fight back. People are always asking us at Seneca, what do I do? Give me something to do. People ask us on the show. I think we all have a different answer and a different idea of what that means. And personally, I've been very frustrated with my own party and in the intensity and urgency of the fighting back.
You're not the only one, Michelle. Polling
I know
shows
that's been
same.
going on or lack thereof. But I just want to, from where you sit and what you see and what you hear every single day, what advice do you give to the American people, specifically in the opposition, how to fight back and what to do, how to prioritize?
Yeah, a couple things. And by the way, some of these things are a little controversial, but I'm gonna absolutely put them out there. Number one, be real careful about chasing every single squirrel. Part of the strategy out of the White House and out of MAGA right now is to every day deliver 3 things that are outrageous. Now, some of them are just completely made up baloney, right? Like, oh, Matt Gaetz is going to be attorney general, right? I would not answer that question because I just knew I just knew it was one of those, squirrels that they throw out there so that we all chase it around. And what happens is if you chase everything that they want you to chase, I'm even a little hesitant, though it gets at the Constitution, the Emoluments Clause, to spend a ton of time on the Qatari 747. Now I will, because it's a security risk, but you really got to, in my opinion, you got to keep the message first and foremost, not exclusively, but first and foremost, focused on the economics. I think we got this wrong in the last election. And I don't want to get into all the cliches about kitchen tables and stuff, but inflation is still out there. People are still struggling. An awful lot of Americans are still struggling. They want people like me to be focused on making it easier for them to buy their prescriptions, to send their kids to college or to community college or whatever. And I'm not saying we don't talk about other stuff. The woman stuff is important. I'm very conscious of what we've been talking about here. The Constitution stuff is really important, but we really got to center those things that are not abstract to the American people. And by the way, when we do talk about stuff, I think a lot about how do we persuade people, because politics at the end of the day is about persuasion.
That's right.
So, let's take something that is as controversial as they come. Let's take women's reproductive rights, right? And I think the Democratic Party needs to acknowledge and own up to the notion that politics is about addition. And so I don't ever want a party that says, if you're progressive economically and you care about inner city youth and you want to make it easier for people to educate, but you're a deeply devout Catholic and you have a problem with abortion, I don't want to slam the door on that person. Instead, what I want to do is what I want to say is, look, I respect your religious point of view, but I've got 2 daughters and I just can't imagine as a guy telling those 2 daughters that they, what I'm saying? You have these conversations that are a little bit more real. And you don't at the end, look, I should specify here because we've got a few fascists running around. We're not inviting fascists into the party. We're not
No.
inviting racists. But I do think we need to be more conscious of the fact, particularly in the social issues, that there are an awful lot of good people out there who are a little more conservative than I am or that you are, and that we want them in because, God, we want to win, right?
Yes.
So I'm going on a little bit too long here, but keeping the message economically focused, not chasing every squirrel that they throw out there for us to face. And then lastly, I would say I've noticed this with my constituents. It's really important that we support each other. This is hard. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And that's why groups like Indivisible, whatever your group is, by the way, the local Democratic Town Committee, your friend group, where you can have good supportive conversations. This is going to go on for a while. So we just got to be there to support each other in a really affirming way.
Can I ask you one last question? Because I know you got to jump, but do you feel, to Michelle's question, that the leadership in the House, and I'm not talking about rank and file members, but I mean the leadership in the House and in the Senate for that matter, is doing a good job conveying that message? Because there's an awful lot of people in the grassroots who are looking to Washington for leadership. And I think they're finding it lacking, not with individual members. I think there's some people like Chris Murphy, for instance, who's done a fabulous job, as have
Absolutely.
you. But I think
Connecticut is killing it.
yeah,
Yeah, I know, right?
Jersey too. Jersey too.
but I think that there are real questions about whether this particular leadership is up to conveying that message, no matter what they do on the Hill, but they're not explaining it right. And I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, and look, let me just say this right up front and acknowledge it. When Schumer went one way on the budget, the continuing resolution, and Hakeem went the other way, that was a terrible, terrible look. Let's set aside who was right or who was wrong there. At a moment in time when people are worried about the country sliding into fascism, that's not okay. The way we handled the State of the Union was not okay, right? I thought of this a week too late. There was a good, dignified way to handle that. In my opinion, that would have been, we sit down respectfully, we show up because he's the president of the United States, and you honor the office, not the man. And the moment he attacks the Democrats or says something outrageous, we all quietly stand up and walk out. That would have been
Yes,
powerful.
totally
visual.
agree. Yes.
This is why I'm not in leadership. I thought of that a week late. But anyway, my
So
point
did
is
they.
Yeah,
They
so do
didn't
they.
think of it at all.
I will totally acknowledge that those episodes were not what they should have been. That said, I will tell you what, I have a lot of faith in Hakeem Jeffries. I'm not going to comment on Schumer because I don't see the guy very much, but I have a lot of faith in Hakeem. He's young. He's in a new role that was occupied by Nancy Pelosi, who was born for the role. And by the way, she spent 20 years getting to the place in the role where she was a Lyndon Johnson-like operator. Hakeem's going to get there. I do have confidence in him. He's careful. That drives some people crazy. I must say that drives people a little crazy.
Us. Yes.
Fair enough.
I often say you need to be a little more Brooklyn, Hakeem. Bring a little more Brooklyn to this.
I know.
Yep. Nope, that's right. But look, he's a young guy, and I think he'd be the first to tell you he doesn't have all the answers. And yes, he needs to be a little bit more Brooklyn. But Tara, if you don't mind my saying, he needs to be a little bit more Brooklyn, but in a way that doesn't alienate Youngstown, Ohio, right?
That's right. But listen,
It's
the
hard.
folks in Youngstown, they listen to Biggie and they wear Brooklyn, stuff too. There's a way to thread that needle. It's about the swag. You gotta have just a little more. You can't be so careful all the time because we don't have time for that. Our democracy is in peril. We're in an existential place, and being too careful while the other side is throwing everything at you with full force. They're not worrying about being careful. So I think it's finding that balance, which is the challenge. So
yeah, I think there's a sense that we're playing by the old Robert's Rules of Order,
right,
which have been tossed out the window, whether we like it or not. I mean, look, I wish when I worked on the Hill back in 2000, I mean, we all got together and we all got along for the most part. And I was there on 9/11 when both sides did not immediately rush out to blame the other. And it was kumbaya moment at that time. But the reality is those days are long over. I mean, really over. And I think there were Democrats and leadership, including Chuck Schumer, who have been around a long time, who don't realize that. And I truly hope that Hakeem Jeffries, because he is younger, because he does come from a different generation, because I think he does have people like you and others who are kind of urging him in a very polite way to get it together, that he gets it together quickly, because truly there's only so much that the rest of us can do. You guys have the power to actually stop this guy legislatively.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a very, very small majority that you can take advantage of. That the Republicans, Mike Johnson, to his credit, has been able to keep together really because of Trump's help. But how much longer it's not going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No
I-
more strongly worded letters.
Yes.
We're gonna have a T-shirt that says that. No
Right.
strongly worded letters with a through it. No
Yes.
more
Yes.
of that.
And I
I'd
know
like
you have to go,
express
Congress.
my concern.
Yeah.
Avocados from Mexico. I know. I'm so sorry. I know you have to go, but the next time you come on, which I very much hope you do, I want to
Yes,
ask
please.
you about your colleagues across the aisle, because you said again, recently that a lot of them are actually outraged secretly and privately, and I want to talk about that, because I want to talk about what it will require for us to get them to have a spine again, for them to stand up on the principles that they privately and secretly tell you they're ashamed of what's happening, and they're afraid to actually speak out and stand up.
The word, let's just tease this because I do want to come back on and join you. But the word I keep hearing is always after 1 or 2 glasses of wine, including last night where I was with a colleague of mine. The word I always get, it's weird, is batshit from Republicans.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh
They
yeah.
know it.
They know it.
And that's the worst part of this. I actually
Yes.
have more respect for the true believers than I do for guys like that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They know better.
Totally.
You know what I call
Totally.
them? I call them Vichy Republicans, and we all know what happened to the Vichys.
I call them cucks, but we'll have to talk about that next time you come on, Congressman.
Congressman, we're going to let you run. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank
for coming
you.
on.
Thanks.
Hope you
Great
come
chatting
back.
with all of you. Really appreciate it.
Taylor Ham. Taylor Ham.
Yeah,
on the
Taylor Ham.
our goal.
Central Jersey is a real place. I'm glad you agree.
Take care, guys. Thank you very
Take
much.
care.
Bye,
Keep up the
Congressman.
good
Thank
work.
you.
Bye.
No,
He's
that's
great.
so
Fun.
funny.
It was
That's
awesome.
great. Yeah, he's wonderful.
Incredible.
You know what I wanted to ask him about, which I didn't get a chance to because he is on the Intelligence Committee. Is I don't know if you guys know this. I wrote a column on it today, but they are deporting Afghan refugees.
Yeah, I saw
Yes,
that.
I did. See
Yeah, who
that.
Joe Biden gave temporary protected status to.
But the white Africans from South Africa
Yes,
are
and the-
perfectly fine to come in.
Because-
And the drug cartel family members, please, you are welcome. Come here.
Yes.
But father of autistic child, gulag for you.
But what's so interesting to me from a national security perspective, and we didn't get a chance to really discuss this with him, is why? I mean, these are people who we promised we would get rid of the Taliban for. We failed at that. There are many reasons for why we failed at that, but none of those reasons include them. And now they're coming here, and a lot of them are women who are going to literally be sent to the Stone Age if they go back there, according to Amnesty, according to the United Nations, according to the Council on Foreign Relations. I mean, nobody claims that life in Afghanistan has gotten better since the Taliban came back, except for Kristi Noem, who did it.
Ugh.
But my real question from a national security perspective, and why Pete Hegseth should have jumped in on this, and Tulsi Gabbard, of course, they won't, because they're who they are.
Morons.
Morons. They're just malignant.
Well, that
But-
too.
But I
That's a
mean,
long list,
Yeah.
Julie.
Yeah.
I mean, why in the world, if you are a foreign national in any place where the United States military or intelligence is operating, and somebody says to you, "Hey, can you help us out?" Why in the world would you ever answer that door? All you're going to do
Listen,
is shit from your side, probably get killed.
yeah,
The United States is going to let you down. I mean, this is the most stupidest
point.
national security self-own I have seen in
it-
years.
I wish that again, it's because there's so much going on that a bigger deal was made about this, because we talk about the importance of our strategic alliances, and people are very upset about what happened in Afghanistan, and it did run amok. But that doesn't change the fact that so many of our men and women went over there and sacrificed some of their lives and their limbs, and the blood that was shed there for the people of Afghanistan, who many of whom were grateful to us coming there to liberate their country from the Taliban. Ask a lot of those little girls that got to go to school, or those women who are no longer raped by the Taliban, and all of the things that were going on there. And then we turn around, and the people who helped us and who helped keep our men and women safe and who helped that are being betrayed. So you can't have it both ways. The temporary protected status being taken away from the Afghans who came over here, who were many of whom were translators and who were people that helped our folks over there, is just awful. That would be like the people who helped us in World War II and us saying, well, sorry, too bad. It's outrageous. When I was on the Hill, the congressman I worked for was very plugged into the Afghan people. I learned more about Afghanistan than I ever thought I ever would know, from the Tajiks to the Uzbeks to the different, 4,500 different tribes that are within Afghanistan, Northern Alliance conversations. And I mean, it was it's a fascinating place, but it's also a failed place. But the Afghan people are good and decent people. And there are a lot of Afghan pockets here in Northern Virginia of folks that came over here as part of this program and have set up restaurants and markets. And now you're same thing with the Venezuelans. Actually, a Venezuelan like empanada shop opened up not too far from me where I live now, which is all part of the TPS status that these folks who are, you know, looking for refuge here, getting out of these countries to come here and make a new life. Like, why are we doing this? It's because Donald Trump wants to continue to isolate America. And instead of the soft power and being that place where people, the beacon that the Statue of Liberty represented, we're now being sold to the Emiratis and the countries that are so corrupt that they know they can cut deals, crypto deals, and give planes and you know, have Donald Trump saluting Saudi generals or whatever the fuck. This is what this is what America's turning into. America is for sale.
And they will tell you, they'll gaslight you by telling you that they're closing the border to keep terrorists from coming in.
Right.
Meanwhile, what we're doing by abandoning these people, abandoning these places, abandoning that soft power is creating fertile ground for those things to take hold there.
Yep.
And talk about, Julie, like to your point, and Tara, obviously to yours too, we are imperiling our own national security at an unbelievably rapid pace, so much so that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yes.
And it will be directly attributable to what is happening right now, what is not happening, what is being done. And you're right. If there were enough hours in the day, in a perfect world, we could focus on all of this at the same time. But to the congressman's point, it's like next to freaking impossible because there's too many shiny objects, because all of the shiny objects are actually really fucking bad for all of us. So it's like we got to walk and chew Sean Spicer amounts of gum at the same time.
To answer Heather Cooper's question, was there a time limit set for temporary status? There are time limits set, but they're renewed. So there were folks that came over from like Nicaragua and from the 80s when all of that crazy was going on there that had temporary protected status renewed year after year after year, just in order to handle, because it's a complicated process. But yes, they set a time limit, thus the temporary, but it can always be extended.
But I will say this for Afghans, they have now said they have to get out of here within 60 days by July.
That's insane.
60 days. And just understand, I say this as somebody who is a refugee myself. You come here, you make a life, you assume you're staying. I mean, these people had no indication they would go back there. I mean, my God, you know, like it is one of the most dangerous places on earth. You try to build a life. And I can only imagine, like I came here in the very last year of Jimmy Carter's, God, I'm old now that I think about this. In the last year of Jimmy Carter's presidency. And then Ronald Reagan became, so I came here in May of 80, and then Ronald Reagan obviously took office in January of 81. I can only imagine if in January of 81, the Reagan administration said to my parents, hey, by the way, bye-bye. I know that Jimmy Carter let you guys in here as refugees, but now you got to go back to the Soviet Union. I don't know what we would have done, because if we had gotten back, that would have been the end of us. That would have been the gulag.
Right.
I mean,
Death sentence.
so, and that's exactly what it means for these people. They're not being sent back to Switzerland.
Right.
They're being sent back to a place that has public floggings and public executions for anybody who the Taliban deems is a traitor to the Taliban. And these people are definitely traitors to the Taliban in the Taliban's eyes, because they got the hell out of there and didn't want to live under the Taliban.
Yep.
So Kristi Noem is not content with just killing puppies and killing goats. She's now killing human beings. I mean, these people are being sent to their deaths.
Yes. And she's dressing up in costume and you know, highlights and fancy watches and 80 pounds of filler in her face, you know, and just kind of like, isn't this beautiful that I'm doing this? And in front of all these people that are in a jail cell behind her. I mean, it's the most sickening thing. It's disgusting. Like, as much it's like you almost have to laugh, but we can't, because it's so awful. People are dying. And, you know, if it's not that, you know, I thought about, Julie, what you were saying about, you know, traitors to the Taliban, like what the Ukrainians that they're trying to kick out of the country. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And again, I bring it back to this thing that the Trump administration is doing and trying to assimilate, right? That's the word that they used, assimilate the white Africans from South Africa who white people in South Africa own the most amount of the wealth, the most amount of the businesses, the land. And they said that they're being oppressed because now that they have to share, they have to share the country with black people after apartheid is absolutely insane. And the fact that we have 3 billionaire oligarchs from South Africa that have major influence and control, quite frankly, over the United States government. We have Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and David Sachs, who are white South Africans who clearly have a racial issue. They have a women issue, and they have a whole lot of
and they have a Nazi problem.
And they have a real Nazi problem.
Tell the Thiel story, Michelle, because you tell it better than anybody, where Thiel came from.
Yeah, so Peter Thiel, obviously, he was born in Frankfurt, Germany. He moved to the United States. He was very, very young. He moved to the United States with his parents, I don't know, for like a year or something when he was very, very little, and then moved to Southwest Africa, to a country that it's now called, and I always mispronounce it.
Namibia.
That always mispronounce it.
Yeah.
While he was living there, it's a town, and there is an article from 1976 in the New York Times about this town where they say that it was more Nazi Germany than Nazi Germany. In 1976, it was one of the, if not the last place where it was acceptable on planet Earth to throw up a Heil Hitler sign, just normal part of life. You know how people say hi, hi, hi. No, it's Heil Hitler in this town in Southwest Africa. The article opens a story that just people in a gas station doing it to each other just to say hello. So this is where Peter Thiel spent his formative years as a child in a private school.
Shocker.
And lived there, like I said, during his formative years before his family then moved back to the United States, and then he went to Stanford. At Stanford, then, of course, then he had ties to Opus Dei, all kinds of things. So listen, this goes very deep. Elon Musk also has Nazi grandparents that were part of the Nazi party in Canada. All right. You look at David Sachs' Twitter account, it is all Russian propaganda. The 3 of them are very much living on the same page, and they all have very similar, if not the same, end goals for the United States. A master race, where we heard that before. So listen, we have the grandsons of Nazis in South Africa with billions of dollars, more wealth than any of us can imagine. And they have the ears and the pocketbooks, and quite frankly, they have the leadership of the American government by the neck. So
just one little nugget to add to that. Elon Musk's name came from a Nazi rocket scientist.
Correct.
His father was inspired by a novel written by one of those Nazi scientists that the U.S. brought over. And in Operation, whatchamacallit, I forgot what it's called. Paperclip, thank you. And he was here and decided to write a science fiction novel about colonizing Mars. And when we send astronauts there and they show up, they find out that Mars was already colonized, and they have a leader who is like a dictator there, and his name was the Elon. That's how Elon Musk got his name. His father admitted this.
And it's more double standard, more hypocrisy, more, I make the rules as I go along. We want less migrants unless they're white migrants, unless they're from the country I want. We want to protect ourselves from, terrorism unless it happens to conflict with, the money that I would like to make or the plane that I would like to get. By the way, why does a library need a fucking plane? Sorry, Julie's dad, but like the idea it's bullshit. First
it's not like he reads books. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean,
let's go a step further, right? Because Congressman mentioned this earlier and we didn't have time to get into it. So he is going to accept a plane that we know full well, and he knows full well, will take years to retrofit for the reasons that Congressman Haim spelled out.
That's correct.
Take it down to the fucking sorry dad studs. Because there's no way they have to, as he mentioned about the Soviet embassy, which I know intimately about, but the problem is every screw can be a listening device. So they're going to have to rip it down to the studs. I don't even know how they can take possession of it.
Unless I just don't care about that.
It's going to
there's that too.
Yeah, it's going to take years and years and years. Presuming that Donald Trump leaves in 2029, in January 29, that's a huge assumption because I believe that we are not having a free election in 2028. But assuming that Donald Trump actually miraculously abides by the Constitution that they will suspend long before that and leaves in 2029, this plane will not be ready by then, even if they take possession of it, even if they fly back with Trump this week. And of course,
why
well,
the reason he's giving was that it's taking Boeing too long to do the new one.
Right.
And now they are behind and over budget.
And
but-
Boeing is a mess, but yeah.
and Boeing
Yeah,
is a
but-
mess.
but
still, okay. So still talk about making America great. How about a great American company like Boeing? I don't blame him for being pissed at Boeing. They took
Right.
do it, but
you
nevertheless,
don't go taking a plane
Yeah.
from the Qataris.
So
Yeah,
as
that's
an option.
right.
he knows it's not going to be ready for him to fly around as president. The only reason he wants it is because apparently Trump Force One, wherever the hell the plane is that he flies in now,
Falling apart.
is also old because he's a cheap person who, until he became president, did not have much money to spend.
I don't think you were going to say person, Julie. What is it
Yeah.
you were going to say?
Cheap bastard, because yes, or motherfucker, I'll say it. Sorry, Julie.
I'm
Dad.
sorry,
It is
Dad.
only
Well,
12.
there's also the Pam Bondi part of this too, right?
Yes,
I mean, Pam
yes.
Bondi was
We're
working
using
with the Qataris at a price tag. She was being paid $150,000 a month by the Qataris, and then now she's the
Attorney General.
Attorney General of the
signing
United
off
States.
on the efficacy
That's
of it.
right.
It's
I'm
fine.
really over it. You set it up. I was going to let Tara go first because she's got to jump, but let me do my quick
Oh
over
yeah,
it
go ahead.
because we just talked about Pam Bondi. So my over it is Pam fucking Bondi. Sorry, Dad. And I'm sorry to the lawyers who will have to be representing me when Pam Bondi indicts me for trashing her. But as you guys know,
You're so old school, Julie. You're not getting indicted. You're just getting sent to a gulag.
that's true. Yeah,
No.
Yeah, indictments, that's such a quaint first
So
step.
sweet.
I
I
know.
know.
You're right. Actually, who am I kidding? My God, to represent me if I were indicted, but they're going to cut to chase and just get me the hell out of here. So that's Delaney Hall, right? That is, I took that picture on Friday. That is where the protest happened in Newark, New Jersey. That is going to be by far the biggest facility housing migrants in the country. It is close to Newark Airport, which is why they put it there, right? That
Right.
is located in Newark. There was a protest on Friday because the mayor of Newark said that they don't have a certificate of occupancy and therefore they should not open. He was arrested. He will now be prosecuted, he's going to be prosecuted by the federal government, and I kid you not, U.S. Attorney Alina Habba. But protesting alongside with, or not protesting, showing up alongside with him to do a spot inspection of Delaney Hall were three members of Congress: LaMonica McIver from Newark, Rob Menendez from Hudson County, and Bonnie Watson-Coleman from the great Central Jersey County of Mercer, who also, I'm sure, loves hoagies and also loves Taylor Ham.
Whoa.
So, yeah. So what ended up happening was that there was a scuffle when they tried to arrest Baraka, and she ended up, Bonnie Watson-Coleman ended up being jostled. She's 80 years old. She's a cancer survivor. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to say she's a cancer survivor. So I'm sorry, Congresswoman, if I let the cat out of the bag, but she is a small lady. This is not, they're now accusing these members of Congress of inflicting bodily harm on these masked ICE
Unbelievable.
agents who I saw when I went to Delaney Hall. They were all wearing masks. Now, if you're wearing masks, are you really proud of what you're doing? I don't
Right.
think so. So what's interesting about that is the person who will have to make a decision about prosecuting three members of Congress is not Alina Habba, because those decisions are not made in the U.S. Attorney's Office in an individual state. Those decisions are made down in Maine Justice, which is the Justice Department in Washington. They have to be made by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, because this is talking about potentially indicting members of the legislative branch. And what is fascinating about this is that Pam Bondi was also a lobbyist for the company Geo Group that owns Delaney Hall,
Oh.
who has a 1.2 billion with a
Yeah.
B dollar contract
Yep.
to run Delaney Hall.
Oh, good God.
He was their lobbyist. I have not seen any
Yeah.
newspaper mention this. It drives me up the wall.
I did see one thing about the $1 billion, which was
About the
like
$1 billion,
blew my
but not
mind,
about
but
the
no Pam Bondi.
No Pam Bondi. I had to look this up. And I did a whole Substack on it yesterday. But the thing is, why am I sitting here looking it up? Where are you, New York Times? I'm over
Right.
here.
Put that in the chat, Julie.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to put that. But what everybody has to understand is that it is her clients. It is in her clients' immense financial interest to the tune of 1.2 billion with a B dollars that this place remain open, and you have members of Congress who are doing what they can to prevent that from happening, because it is a shithole that has had complete and utter issues with it when it was open the last time before it was shut down.
Oh my God.
This makes
is-
Kellyanne Conway's little,
Oh.
slip up with
By
the
Ivanka
emoluments and Ivanka Trump seem
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
child's play.
So my point is the woman who is deciding whether the Geo Group is going to keep their 1.2 billion sugar daddy facility open is the same woman who is deciding whether to prosecute members of Congress and the sitting mayor of Newark, who could deny them a certificate of occupancy and is suing the Geo Group to prevent it from opening.
See, this is that bullshit because this is
Where
why
are you, media?
Democrats, right? The Democrats should be in front of a microphone every
single
day, bringing up that Donald Trump is going to bankrupt his own constituents by cutting Medicare and Medicaid and their benefits and screwing veterans. And oh, by the way, our attorney general is in bed with the same people that that's enriching themselves here.
Yep.
They were clients of hers, and she's bought and paid for by the Qataris, by the private prison people, by such and such and such and such. So, do you really think that that's blind justice? Go ask Pam Bondi why ... Every single interview. You bring it up. I don't give a damn if they ask them what the weather was today and what they had for breakfast yesterday. You fucking bring up that Pam Bondi is bought and paid for by the Qataris and the private prison industry, and she wants to prosecute members of Congress
For trying to shut down the prison that she was paid to have open because she worked for them for a long time. She worked for them and by the way, let me just say one more thing. I dropped the article that I wrote, the news.
I'm actually going to bring this up on MSNBC. That's the reason why I have to go. I'm going to be on MSNBC at 1:30.
Why don't you do
Oh, yeah, no worries. I mean, obviously, I won't go on with my Seneca hat on. I have to judge myself up a little. But I'm talking about the judge out in Wisconsin. She was indicted. The judge that they had arrested. She was, in fact, indicted. And I will work this in. Because if they're trying to do federal charges against her, I will work this in today. Mark my words.
Yeah. I mean,
so I can do my over it then real fast because it is not the judicial branch. So Chief Justice Roberts, who many folks thought would be the moderating voice in the Supreme Court and that he would stand up and do the right thing because he's such an institutionalist with the court. Yeah, well, Chief Justice Roberts has been screwing that up a lot lately and went along with Donald Trump on things that a lot of people thought he wouldn't, including that god-awful immunity ruling last year that has basically given Donald Trump carte blanche to do whatever the fuck he wants. And he has. So what a shocker. Chief Justice Roberts gave a speech at Georgetown where he was very pearl-clutching concerned about the rule of law being endangered. No shit. You think, Chief Justice Roberts, when you give someone like Donald Trump carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wants, like a dictator as president, and now you're concerned about, he's coming for the judges and the judicial system too, and you're worried about the rule of law being endangered.
Yeah.
You know what? Then do something about it. Stop ruling in favor of this fucking guy and destroying our democracy. You guys are the last line of defense here.
Literally.
And you've got two members on your Supreme Court who are up the ass of Donald Trump, in Clarence Thomas and Alito, that are part of this. You have fix it then. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that you're concerned.
The arsonist. Yeah, the arsonist is very concerned about the prevalence of fires. Like, it's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is all you, dude. Like, you, and you're also Chief Justice.
Yeah.
Like, it's just,
Right.
Well,
do something about it.
It's leopards eating people's faces party shit, right? Like, I never thought the leopard was going to come from my face. I mean, these are supposedly smart people. By the way, they've been operating without an ethics code since the fucking dawn of time. And even despite all the blatant fucking corruption that was exposed in the last several years, there's nothing really that binds them to this. And to take Tara's point further, Congress is supposed to have oversight of this shit. And we got Dick Durbin finally leaving, by the way. Thank you very much. No offense, Dick Durbin. I'm sure once upon a time you were an effective member of the Senate, but not so much now. The Congress is, even our side has gelded themselves by not having oversight over this court. And John Roberts is going to whine. It reeks of Kavanaugh not being able to enjoy his dessert in a fucking steakhouse.
Exactly. Spare me.
Listen, these people don't deserve a moment of peace ever.
No, that's what Pritzker said.
Ever.
That's right. True.
And that's the thing. It's like,
not violence. We don't encouraging violence.
No, of course not. No. I'm just talking about just like I want
Yeah.
them to feel uncomfortable, and I want them to hear noise for every moment that they are awake, because
Yeah.
they are responsible for the dismantling of our democracy. They have, I mean, from Citizens United to Trump v. United States to the end of Roe for women and what that floodgate has opened. I mean, these people are beyond the pale. Like I don't have words. I don't have words for how awful these people, specifically for Alito and Thomas, but then the people like Roberts, who somehow are like, oh, they're the ones that care about their legacy. And like, no, they don't. No, they don't. And to your point, Joe, about, the leopard eating the face thing, that I don't seem to, where are people, where have you been? And like, this is a thing too, like Tara and I, at our last place of employment, we talked about this a lot over there. We seem to have we all kind of wrote the encyclopedia on Donald Trump's, psyche and like how he treats people, not to mention the four of us here growing up in the tri-state area. We know Donald Trump.
Yep.
We know who he is. We know what his game plan is. We know what the playbook is. He's a con man. Anything he says is meaningless. He's not going to stick up for you. It's about Donald Trump at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if you're Chief Justice Roberts, if you're the Qatari government. It does not matter. He will take what he wants from you, and then he will screw you and humiliate you. And there is no amount of anything that you can give this man. There's no amount of money or sycophancy or anything that will make him somehow feel like he owes you something, because once he's done with you, he's done with you.
Yes.
And he's done with the Supreme Court now. They've given him what he needed.
Yeah,
You saw the handshake at the fake State of the Union, right? We saw
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
So
God.
thank you. And let me just say this, and this is the part where I think I kind of diverge to the congressman on what he said, because he said we have the courts, we have the rule of law, and
Yeah.
We didn't have enough time because I was going to push back a little on it. But
yeah. So
We gotta
here's
have
where
we want him to come back.
I know.
Something coming back, because I did want to raise this, and I didn't want to, we don't have time, but I will raise it now. You had Stephen Miller talking about suspending habeas corpus if the courts don't rule in their favor. And then Steve Bannon yesterday or the day before went on some podcast and went off on habeas corpus and how if these judges don't fall in line, they're just going to suspend habeas corpus.
I'm glad you brought that up, because
What rule of law?
this is what they do.
Yes.
This is how they float what
Test
they're going to
balloon.
do. They
It's a test balloon.
they always telegraph what
Always.
the next battle plan will be. They always do this. They did the same thing with the lead up to January 6th and challenging the election.
Yep.
They mean what the fuck they say. Okay? This
Steve
isn't a
Bannon
pipe
was
dream
talking about January 6th for weeks.
for months.
Oh, so
before.
was
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not a pipe dream. It's not a hypothetical.
No.
It's not just, we're just for shits and giggles.
No.
They are laying the foundation to do this.
Yes.
Yep.
They're
Yes.
test balloons, 1000%. So that
Right.
by the time it happens, you're not outraged anymore, because they've been telling you they were going to do it all
Right.
along.
Exactly.
Your nervous system has already settled into it. And like the thing is, like
Right.
Steve Bannon wears 8 shirts at a time and looks like a human herpy. But like, here's the thing.
That's so mean
Like-
to herpes.
I know. 1 in 4, 1 in 4, 1 in 4. But here's the thing is that Steve Bannon is an evil genius. He should be
Yes.
taken seriously.
Yes.
Like, yes,
Yeah.
he's a clown, but he's
He's not an
very,
idiot.
He's
very
smart.
Stephen Miller is
Yeah.
wormy. I mean, he went to Duke, so like, yeah, he's not an idiot, but like,
Well,
But he's been a horrible person since high
so
school.
well
Yes.
He's,
He's- that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know I should stop putting so much value on where people went to school, but I just like, he's not like a dumb, but he has been the same person since he was a teenager. He is evil inside and out. The thing about Stephen Miller that I wish more people understood, especially the people on our side and the opposition, is that Stephen Miller doesn't like to be made fun of.
None of them
And
do.
he should be mocked endlessly. And
I
I don't know what everyone, I mean, Joe, I mean, you're on deck, Joe. But like, I don't understand. Like, it's make fun of this man. He is the most make fun ofable person ever.
He
He's
is.
Nosferatu with his.
He's
with
not
straight
even
hair.
40.
Yeah, no, I tell you,
Look at him.
he sleeps in a coffin line with ICE detention center blankets, people. Okay. He's an evil ventriloquist dummy that was reanimated to strip brown babies from their mommies. Okay?
Yes.
So true.
Who was on stage in high school yelling to the student body about how janitors need to pick up his trash?
Oh my
And
God.
then he doesn't need to.
Robert Carr,
Why
Robert
should he?
Carr.
Why should he have to pick up his own trash? He actually
Right.
said this in high school.
Robert
Mr.
Hart,
Burns.
this guy said he's Mr. Burns made young. He is Mr. Burns made young. That's
Oh
exactly.
my God, from The Simpsons.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's so
Yes.
funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
He's but
Yeah.
the point though here is that these are awful, terrible, evil, unredeemable people that were made fun of, that, well, rightfully, but that were losers in life, that have gotten power, and now they're exacting the revenge
Yep.
on everyone
J.D.
else.
Vance. He's
Yes,
another one.
All of them.
It's like a loser parade.
Well, it
All
is
of
tyranny of the unfuckable, but it's all about. This is why they're able to tap into grievance so well, right?
Yes.
That's the
Yeah.
special sauce. That's
Correct.
what Obama won on hope and change, and Trump won on grievance, and it's those people who took from you, because
Yep.
these people understand grievance, because Donald Trump wasn't accepted into polite New York society, and
Correct.
he was made fun of in military school,
Yep.
and J.D. Vance was a God knows what fucking in the closet,
And not to mention his own family terrorized
Right.
him and made fun
You're
of him. I
right.
mean, from infancy.
because he was terrible.
Right. So this is
Joe-
grievance. This is, Stephen Miller, who he looks like
Joe, last week Joe wrote that she bet Stephen Miller hisses at garlic bread.
well, yes. And I think the refrigerator light is like blinding. Oh, yeah. I mean, I call him
Oh
Matchbox.
God, that's so
Like,
funny.
Oh my God, Michelle, that's a spot for our friends over at a certain late night show could probably put together
Oh, I should text them.
brilliantly.
Oh,
Anyway, well,
yes.
I'm gonna go just because I don't want to interrupt you guys because Michelle, you have a great over it, and so do you, Joe. So I am going to depart now and give you guys that uninterrupted. And thank you, everybody, and thank you to everyone that
I'll
congratulated
call
us
you
on the
later,
Webby.
Sarah.
And I'll call you later before
Have
the
a
meeting
great hit.
at 3. And I'll see y'all on MSNBC. Bye, guys.
Yeah, 1:30, right?
Yeah, I'll be on 1:35, I think. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well,
Get off
then,
for that so people can watch you. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
So,
Ooh,
all
My
right.
head just got really big.
Yeah.
I was like, ah.
So, Michelle, I'm gonna take my glasses off. I didn't realize that there was such a reflection. So Michelle, what is your over it?
Well.
Well,
I mean, I feel like mine's like specific, but not, because I was just so pissed off this morning. And I think my piss offery started yesterday with Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson and their stupid book about Joe Biden. But it really, I think, is just so much bigger there than that. My problem is the bro culture on the left. Because we keep talking about how we need a Joe Rogan. And I'm like, I don't know that we do. Because there certainly seems to be a lot of white men and a lot of boys on the left. And I'm just going to say men in general, who seem to constantly have each other's backs, who always put each other before they put the rest of us. And I'm talking about women. I'm talking about people of color, immigrants. I mean, because at the end of the day, they're all going to sit on their podcast and tell us how we need to think. And, and some of this is in the form of, and you all can get mad at me, I don't care, because none of these people know who I am and they don't invite me on their shows anyway. So we'll just keep it that way. Pod Save America. Okay. These are rich boys with a podcast who are very successful and like to tell us all how to think. I'm talking about Ezra Klein. Ezra Klein, who's got a podcast, who likes to be filmed in 5 different vantage points where he dramatically tells us about what's going on in the country. And I'm like, I can't even take this seriously. I'm talking about David Hogg, who in the beginning, I was like all about what he had to say, because yes, I agree that a lot of Democrats need to be primaried and they need to be pushed to do better and to fight harder. But quite frankly, he's starting to take the James Carville playbook. And listen, I think James Carville has a lot of really good things to say. I think he's a very smart man. He's said a lot of things that make a lot of sense, especially to, the working class voters, union people in the South. Okay, I get it totally. But when you are complaining about how women are too preachy on the left, and that we all, yeah, I'll tell you
about women, or he just said generally people are too preachy.
That word preachy is
no.
back.
I'll tell you.
Talked about preachy the other day. Preachy's back. Yeah.
Yep. Carville, too many too many preachy females are dominating the culture of the Democratic Party.
All right, can I just pause for a second here, because
Yeah.
I don't know him well, but I've kind of intersected with James Carville insofar as I got my start in the 90s in politics, or ran into him along the way. Back when the whole thing happened with Paula Jones, which goes back to literally the 90s, like the mid-90s. I remember
Conway.
I remember saying a long time ago, for those of you who were not alive back then, I remember turning to the congressman who I was working for, who is named Frank Pallone, who now is the ranking member on Energy and Commerce, the committee that is in charge of saving Medicare. So he's a good guy for you guys to know. We'll have him on the show one day. But I remember turning to him, and I was all of like 23 when this happened. And I said, James Carville's saying that when you drag a $1 bill through a trailer park, you never know what kind of scum is going to come out. I go, that's not how you speak to women.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just interesting because they're like, oh, like I just remember like, and Frank Pallone is the like most respectful. There was no better member of Congress to get your start with because he was respectful. He was great with women. He's just a wonderful man. Like,
Sure.
Like no notes, 10 out of 10. But I just remember saying this, like it was a visceral reaction. I didn't really think much about how women were treated or not treated back then. I just kind of rolled with it. But I was like, this is the problem. This is why James Carville got Paula Jones all pissed off.
Yeah.
She would have been fine if comments like that were not being made.
Yep.
But when you treat women like they're lesser than,
Mm-hmm.
when you say that she's trailer trash and you drag a $1 bill to a trailer park, you never know what's going to come out.
Oof.
Like, you don't fucking say that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't say that about people who live in mobile homes or whatever trailer parks are called these days, the polite term for it. You don't say that about women. You don't say that about uneducated people who may not have gone to law school like James Carville. You just don't do that. And the sad thing is, it's been over 30 years and he's continuing that shit.
Yes. They don't learn because they just continue to get away with it.
Well,
Because that's what I mean. Learn. Paula
know.
Jones did not want to come forward. Paula Jones just wanted somebody to privately say sorry.
Yes.
Well, right, but look, they're looking across the other side, being rewarded.
Correct. Yes. Yes. And that's
celebrated
Yeah.
and
Yes, Joe.
uplifted and given huge powers of incredible consequence and weight. Hello,
Right.
Pete Hegseth. So I mean, yeah, these are supposed to be the good guys on our side, but they're still bros who are like, I don't want to let my tenuous hold on my spot go.
No.
Like
No,
I wrote about this today. I don't want to share the sky with these chicks. Like
exactly.
they don't even know that this caveman fucking mentality creeps in, but they're looking at it on the other side going, I want that too. I don't want to let go. Like,
But it's a pendulum, right? Like this is because I know this back from when the Me Too movement was really at its height back in 2016, 17, because I helped launch it. But first it went one way and now it's going the other way. My friends, the pendulum's going to swing back again.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It
is.
It's going to be held against you.
Well, and I think that for a while, the guys on the left, a lot of them, not all of them, there are some that are really wonderful people who do all the right things, and thank God for them, truly.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the other ones, and I think we all know who those people are here, at least the three of us. I think that because they're like the good guys, they pretend, or at least tell themselves that they have to pretend to care about women and women's issues and things that we say. And we have to, we're going to sit there and like, oh yeah, strong women, blah, 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 blah. And I think that after Roe fell, I think that they were kind of afraid of the power that we had from within the party. And I think when women did not show up to vote in the ways that we thought that we were going to, or the way that we thought some would, I think that they said, oh, wow, they're not as powerful as they thought they were. So now I guess it's just, we're going to have to take power back. We got to leave it to the boys because we're in charge now. And like, this is the way that David Hogg has been talking. He has been saying like, oh, we just need to he hasn't really come out and said it, but he alludes to the fact that we need to, it's kind of like we have to be in touch with the guys and we have to talk about like things in a certain way, kind of alluding to this MAGA-esque, not totally, because they're in, the MAGA people are insane, but like in a way that maybe isn't so feminine.
He's talking about Turning Point, essentially. He's talking about like leaning into more of what Turning Point does and how they created this. And by the way, Turning Point, they are anti-woman, anti-women's, success stories and women's progression as just about anyone on the planet.
Right.
And there's a million trillion reasons for why they're successful, not least of which has to do with the pandemic, by the way, but also video games, also that uber male mentality. I mean, it's like Andrew Tate and all that other fucking shit is very intoxicating, and they're all over social media. There's a million trillion reasons for why that demographic, young men in particular, are sliding further and further far right. And what we cannot do as a party is just say, oh, well, then we need to lean into more of that.
Yeah, no,
not-
that's not it.
success.
That's just not it. And like, I'm not going to sit here. And again, like, and then I have to sit here and listen over and over and over to these. I'm not going to name any names, but people talking about the male loneliness epidemic. And I'm like, I have to sit here and listen to how lonely you are while I'm having to sit here and look in the comments at people making sexually threatening, harassing comments to me day in and day out, not just to me, but to the women in my life, the women I work with. Like, spare me when we are having to literally wade through shit day in and day out just to be alive and to survive and to exist and to speak up in this environment. So please, like the guys on the left, I'm like, I'm sorry, but you are not the answer. You're part of the answer. You're part of the solution, but you are not the solution. And the more that you continue to do this, to Julie's point, the pendulum will swing in the other way. And while we're sitting here having to listen to the right talk about that we don't even need to have a right to vote, let alone participate in democracy or in places of power and leadership, the pendulum will swing back, and we will remember that what you didn't say. And we will remember that you sat there and sat on your hands, Pod Save America, when there was a little bit of an autopsy that you did after the election. And with the word women was not mentioned once.
Well, let's just real quick about Pod Saves. Michelle, I got into a huge fight. He ended up blocking me. And by the way, now that I know, I've seen him in person, I understand a lot more about Jon Favreau. Hi, Jon. He blocked me for this because he thought we should just leapfrog over Kamala, that we should just bypass the vice president. The first African-American female Indian vice president in our history. We needed to just pick new people. We needed to pick the white guys that he wanted, that they thought
were the most out of touch of people. I swear to God.
I mean, there's so much misogyny baked into that. And I don't know if he has a daughter, but I believe he does. And I do. And it's her birthday, by the way. But just imagine
happy birthday.
What that tells. Thank you. What she said, thank you. I mean, I should say thank you because she came out at me, but whatever. I mean, and all that. But still, what does that tell the rest of the world? What does it tell little girls? What does it tell?
Okay,
I can leapfrog you. I can jump over you for a dude.
Let me just say this because this has been, Michelle, you brought this up, and now this has been bubbling up in me for a really long time. So I am your standard American family. I am a married woman with a child, right? When I'm done with this podcast, I will have to go back to work and work nonstop until my son comes home, and then I have to deal with his shit. Right? I mean, because we all do. And then I have to make sure he does his homework. And then I'm going to have to go to the store and figure something out for dinner. And it's going to have to be something creative because I can't serve the same thing every night. And then I'm going to have to cook it. And then my husband's going to come home. I'm going to have to give it to him. And I have the best husband in the world. I'm not complaining about him, but he goes to work every day and he comes home and he gets a hot meal on the table. And I'm going to have to make sure that the homework is done. I'm going to have to make sure the teeth are brushed. I'm going to have to make sure that he gets to bed and not stays up doing whatever the hell he's going to do, my son till, and by the time I go to bed, I will have probably done the job of 6 men.
Oh yeah.
And what I think these guys don't understand is that when they get off their podcasts, they're going to order Uber Eats, or they're going to go out to dinner, or they're going to go home and their wife is going to have a meal for them.
Yep.
And she's going to make sure the kids are okay. I'm not generalizing all of them. I'm just saying this is typically how it works. She's going to make sure the kids are okay. And she's going to make sure that there's food in the fridge. And she's going to make sure that everybody's dentist appointments are scheduled. And she's going to make sure that everybody like all
it's that invisible labor that people just don't seem to know.
And then when you think, and Michelle, you're married, and Joe, you used to be married. So you guys know this. It doesn't matter if you're married. It actually creates more work for you, no matter how fantastic your husband is. It just creates more work for you.
I can speak to that. Yeah. And there's also, sorry, go ahead, Julie. Sorry.
Yeah. So my point is don't tell women that they have to get back in the kitchen because we're already there. But in addition to being in the kitchen, we're also working our asses off and now probably making sometimes more money than our husbands or more money than our boyfriends or more money than these people sitting. I don't want to call them incels because I think it's actually disrespectful, but these young men who are sitting there saying, I'm so lonely. I'm so this, I'm so that. You know what? There's something worse than loneliness. It's the fucking labor.
Yeah.
That we have to put into relationships with you, no matter how good those relationships are. And I speak as a really, really, really happily married person. is not blaming my husband. It's just reality as to what
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah. I mean,
1,000%, Julie. 1,000%.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, all those invisible things that women do. And again, no offense, there's many amazing, wonderful male allies out there, incredible
Yeah.
guys. Your husbands.
Yeah.
I have
My
people in
husband's
my
an
life-
amazing person. I
Right.
love him very much, but
and
you know,
and they support. Yeah, but like, I will just speak. I can only speak to this for myself. But as a woman, like, there's a reason why most. The people who left their jobs during the height of the pandemic were mothers, were women, right? Because I have long felt that I wanted to be home when I could be home with my kids in the middle of that pandemic, when your kids were not in school and
Right.
somebody should have stayed home. Not in every case was that even possible, but it was like, well, I'm the mom, I should stay home, or the husband would say, you should stay home. It makes the most sense. But the personal compulsion as the mom, as a mother, is to be there. Like, I'm not,
Mhm.
again, that's not for everyone, but for me, that is definitely the case. And I think, again, it speaks, we can look to the statistics and say that. And I think a lot of people completely overlook that. And to your points, both of you, that a lot of guys take all of that for granted because they don't have the same inherent compulsion. And I also say that as someone, by the way, who was raised by a man who in 1983 got full and complete custody of 5 children.
Mm.
From my mother. So I was raised by a single father. So I'm not saying that this is true of every man, but I think that like, it's true of a lot. And I think that side is that our side, our dude side, that brosphere
Yeah.
is sliding ever more
Yes.
precipitously
Yes.
into becoming comfortable with a reality that they used to espouse they were against. And like, that's the slide that worries me a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it does pivot to my overhead. If Michelle, I don't know if I don't want to
Yeah.
step
No,
on
I
you.
just had one last thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I've also worked for male dominated organizations and companies. And, you know, a lot of times women get put up in front as human shields, right?
Mhm.
To say, oh, look at me, I support women. Oh, we care about women's issues. But like, look, a woman works here. And like, a lot of times those organizations and those places get easier funding. They get it's an easier path to investors in their endeavors because there's this implicit bias just kind of baked in that they are just automatically trusted because, you know, they're you know, the things that they espouse, the things that they talk about, you know, they're experts just because, I don't know, I'm just looking at them and they seem like they are. But women have to prove themselves 10 times harder. And I say this as someone who runs a women's organization that is not even a year old. The amount of uphill battle day in and day out, trying to get people to take us seriously, to invest in the work that we're trying to do, to not just invest in us, but just like the mission, because we're out here swinging, not just for women, but for everybody. And so,
Mhm.
you know, and Julie, you know this too, because you run an organization that primarily, you know, fights for women's rights in the workplace with Gretchen Carlson. And these things are very hard to fund, especially now in this downslide after the election.
2%, Michelle. I don't know if you know this. I don't know what just happened. A bunch of balloons. This is nothing to celebrate, so scared of the balloons. But 2% of all nonprofit dollars go to women's.
Yeah, exactly.
2%.
Exactly. And so, you know, Tara had a conversation with someone just last week who's trying to start a women's, you know, media company. And they were like, yeah, you know, I sat in a thing and like, they didn't support me, but the other men in the room, they all got money.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying, like, it's a bigger thing where it's just like, yes, I'm tired of having to prove myself, but that's just part of being a woman. And that's just how it is. And like, I'm a white woman. So imagine if I was a Black woman or an immigrant woman, like how much harder it would be, because I've got it easy in comparison. But, you know, I say all this for all of us because we need the good guys to be good guys and not just pretend you're a good guy. And like, that's what I'm tired of. I'm just really, really tired and I'm very over it. So, you know, the self-congratulatory stuff that's going on the left, like, hey guys, we're still here. And Julie, to your point, the pendulum's going to swing back and we were going to remember what you said and what you didn't say. So, Joe.
Very good.
Yeah, speaking of inferior men, my over it does pick up on this because it's again that brosphere and it's again the supposed good guys.
Mhm.
who've been sort of positioning themselves as being either moderate or apolitical or whatever journalists.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say the name of the book because I don't want to plug it. He's already tried to farm my engagement by quote
Which
tweeting
is
me.
absolutely wild. Just
Yeah.
totally crazy.
I mean, this is what they do, right? By the way,
Mm-hmm.
Narcissist of a Feather, and I have long heard from a very good friend of mine, who I won't name, that he was in her DMs anytime she would have the audacity to criticize something he said. So this is about Jake Tapper. Yeah, Jake Tapper.
Jesus.
Yeah, Jake Tapper has a trashy new crap, whatever. I don't know what he call it, a book. Okay, I call it cat litter liner. Because now, of course, is the perfect time to blame the last president.
Mhm.
Or everything that is wrong in the world. Yeah, Jake Tapper has a book. By the way, I'll just say this, that he's parading all over CNN as news. They're not just Jake, which he was like basically interviewing himself. Like, so Jake, this is true, right? Yes. So that wheelchair thing, I'm not giving any context for, but I just keep saying that he was going to be in a wheelchair. Yes, Jake, that's true. Fuck that. And fuck him and fuck everybody else on CNN who's like, there's new information out. It's like, no, the new information is in his book. And talking, by the way, when he quote tweeted me, he quoted George Clooney to make his point for why Joe Biden was unfit and is responsible.
Girl.
I
You
know
know how I feel about
You
George
had the
Clooney.
best response about Clooney in that exchange, and I want you to talk about it because it's so relevant to what you're talking about.
Yeah, so he's quoting George Clooney, and then so I asked the question: you want me to trust George Clooney's assessment of Joe Biden's fitness for office and his attributing the loss of the election to Joe Biden's unfitness for office? The same George Clooney who only a few weeks before he wrote that op-ed at the urging of someone I'm not going to say, by the way, speaking of like tough guys, but he held a fundraiser for the person that he would later, only a few weeks later, say was not fit to reelect. A fundraiser that raised $28 million. He held the fundraiser. Weeks and weeks went by and he didn't say a goddamn word, not one word. And now he's supposed to be the gospel on why Joe Biden, who didn't recognize him apparently, should have stepped aside. Well, where the fuck were you, George Clooney, if that is true, that night and every single night that followed? Because the next thing I saw was an op-ed where you jumped on the bandwagon, the one that became very popular all of a sudden. And where were you, Jake?
Because they just love to hear themselves talk. Anyways, keep going.
And Jake Tapper was the one who moderated the debate and still walked away not saying Joe Biden should step aside. Joe Biden seems unfit. And the last thing I'll say, because all of this is just maddening, is we have a fucking convicted felon, adjudicated rapist, con man, who is stealing people away from our country and sending them to gulags. There it is. He's taking a $400 million flying bribe from a country that funds fucking terrorists. Hello, 9/11. Hello, Gaza. And they're not, by the way, he was falling asleep in public. He talks about Hannibal Lecter. He talks about 2 dolls. He's literally fucking insane. He wears a fucking diaper. Pardon me. Sorry. I get so fired up about this. And what is Jake Tapper focused on right now? The last guy, the guy who, by the way, I had the incredible honor and privilege of meeting over the course of 3 years, 4 times. Well, okay, technically 4 times because one time was twice in one day, but it was in 2 different places. So I'm going to count it as 4. So it's really only 3, but like 3 days before. But it's like this jerk scene. Sorry. Anyway, and I'll tell you what, and I will swear on my grave, I will swear on all things holy. The man I met in 2021, he was, on his game. He was as smart and sharp as a tack. And the man I met in December of 2024 was just as sharp. Was he a little slower in his step? Was he a little frailer? Every guy who goes into the White House leaves older. Okay. Even Obama. He came out silver, right? They all come in younger and more virile than they leave. But he was as sharp as a tack the last time I saw him, and he recognized people. He wasn't fumbling over his words. He didn't belong in a fucking wheelchair. Context also. What Jake says is in his own book is that what the doctor said was that if Joe Biden had fallen and injured himself, that he would have required a wheelchair for his recovery.
Yeah.
Same as all of us. The same as all of us, by the way.
Right.
What's that?
Yeah.
Well, 80 years old. No fucking shit.
Yeah, when an 80-year-old falls, like it's a problem.
So
You know
here's,
what I mean?
but here's my problem, Joe, with all of this. It's that you're a journalist And
Right.
you're blaming everybody else for covering up Joe Biden's decline. So I will say, Joe, I saw Joe Biden over the course of his presidency. I did see a market decline, right? And I said it at the time to people. I didn't say it publicly, but I said it to people. I'm not in Washington every day. I'm not covering the White House every day. CNN has White House reporters covering the president every day. The network which Jake Tapper works. Jake Tapper also, I assume, saw Joe Biden over the course of those 4 years all the time. If there's a cover up, why didn't you expose it? It's not like, it's not like Biden was hiding in the basement for 4 years.
Right.
You saw him at events. You saw him doing stuff. But the part that really upsets me about this, and this is not a both sides thing, but it really upsets me about this is we have somehow normalized Donald Trump.
Yep.
We have somehow said that all the things that you just said right now, that's just Trump being Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to write books when Trump is gone about how Trump is batshit crazy because that's just Trump being Trump. That's all baked in.
Right.
What? In the same way that they chased, it started with the New York Post, but then they all chased Burisma with Hunter. Hunter. Let's investigate Hunter. Let's hold hearings about Hunter. The press, here's a shiny object with Hunter. And the press was like, yeah, okay, we're going to go chase that shiny object with Hunter. Where are the stories about what Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. are doing
right now,
right now,
making their family's business richer than they've ever been.
Where is the media laser focused on who's giving money to the crypto fund that Steve Witkoff's son is running while Steve Witkoff is off negotiating Ukraine peace and negotiating Middle East peace that Donald Trump is an 80% stake in? Why is everybody just saying, oh, you know what? It's okay because it's okay that Bezos just gave Melania $40 million for her life story. Give me her life story, really?
As Tara would say, she should be thanking her lucky stars that she's not milking goats in Slovenia right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Slovenia, quite honestly. I don't know why she left. It's a beautiful country, but I don't know what exciting things happen in Slovenia, but exciting things happen here for her to meet Donald Trump. Yeah. But, look, the reality is all of that is baked in. Oh, of course, Melania has a meme coin. Of course, Trump has a meme coin. Of course.
Right. It's why wouldn't they? That makes sense. Why wouldn't you want to
$40 million for her life story? That's just baked in. But why don't we go focus stupid Hunter Biden stories for 4 years? Yeah, that pisses me off about this, Joe, is not so much that Jake is sitting here writing a belated story about Joe Biden. It's that he could have written that story at any time over the 4 years that Biden was in office and apparently chose not to.
Right.
Right. He was hedging his bets, if you ask me.
I'll say that Alex Thompson, as much as insufferable as I think he is, and his unhealthy obsession with Joe Biden during the campaign and during the election. However, I'll give it to him that he was writing those stories and but Jake Tapper was not. But he has the bigger reach and the bigger audience.
Yeah. And so I want a book right now. I want one of these people to write a book right the fuck now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to apologize to my dad again for the fact that as we sit here today, you don't need to wait until the administration is over. You can write it now. Yeah. The grift that is happening right now with Jared and Ivanka, with Eric Trump, with Donald Trump Jr. I have no idea what the other two are up to, but I'm sure it's probably nothing good. Maybe
what's her face is
her husband is broke or something.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so and Melania's meme coin, and Melania's bio, Amazon bio,
Tiffany,
and World Financial Lenders, and Trump's meme coin, and all the ways that they're taking money, and God knows how much money both the Trump organization and the crypto fund is taking in this little Middle Eastern trip, because it's not a coincidence he didn't go to Britain first. It's not a coincidence he didn't go to France first. He went to the Middle East because they know grift. They know bakshish. It's a term. It's called bakshish. I'm sure you know it, Joe, because of because you cut your dad, right? Is your dad Lebanese?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the term is bakshish. That's what it is in the Middle East. You want to do business, you got to pay a little bakshish.
Mm-hmm. Right. And don't forget, also Marjorie Taylor Greene and other members of Congress made a fortune just randomly, coincidentally, when Donald Trump was fucking around with the stock market. Buy now, I'm going to crash it, and then I'm going to tell you to buy. She was just, I'm sure she's just a stock market savant because obviously she's very intelligent. But I mean, it's just blatant corruption. And this is what I wrote today. If you're more interested in making money and what you say happened in the last presidential election than you are in reporting on the blatant presidential corruption that's been happening since the election, you are not a journalist. You are an asshole and you are complicit. Hey, friends, you have a responsibility. If you wear the label of journalist, you have a responsibility to report on this. And Julie is right. And I'm not against anybody making money. Hey, good luck to you, right? But you can make money on a story that is reporting on what we are actually living through now. And I would also argue that if you want to attribute any blame for the results of the last election to anybody, you have a mirror, look in it.
Right. And yeah.
Yeah. And I have to go back to the fact that all of these reporters might have had this information, but they sit down until they could write the book. This is
yeah.
thing with the New York
Bob
Times.
Woodward.
They all do this, right?
Yeah.
I had this
Maggie
information
Haberman.
2 years ago, but I saved it for the book. Well,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Then why am I paying my cable bill? And why am I subscribing to the New York Times? Or I used to subscribe to the Washington Post for Bob Woodward.
Yeah. No mas.
No mas.
Yeah.
Right.
Grifting and opportunistic.
But why? Right. So now I have to also buy your book.
Mhm.
You are a reporter and you work on the news. What makes it news is it happens currently. Write it. If Jake Tapper saw that Joe Biden was fading, he should have said so every single day for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't
They have a
stayed-
responsibility to the American people and, quite frankly, our democracy, which is in peril.
Right. And it speaks to their credibility. So why should I trust George Clooney? He's not a journalist. Why should I trust him? Why should I trust Jake Tapper? If Jake's telling us that he knew these things and writing a whole book about it after the fact, why would I trust him on any thought or reporting that he has now? Why would I trust anything in this book? Honestly, I think that speaks to their credibility. If it's all about
I couldn't agree
money,
more.
yeah.
I really, yeah. And George Clooney too, who did that actors on actors thing with Patty LuPone at the Rainbow Room a couple weeks ago, said that, you know, he thinks we're going to be just fine. We're going to be just fine. I was like, what an easy, nice thing for you to say from your castle in Lake Como that you live in with your beautiful, brilliant wife, who, by the way, is 10,000 times smarter than you, and your gorgeous children and all your bajillions of dollars and your $900 tickets to the show that I'll never see because it's too expensive and I can't afford it. You know, I just like, so again, like another example, like they're just, these people are so out of touch. Like I cannot even, so that I do. And I know we're running out of time. Hi, my cat is like doing this, like please pet me right now. I did want to end the show maybe on something a little more positive, a little more helpful.
Mhm.
I want to point out to a couple men who I think are doing the right thing. One of them is a gentleman named Jim Acosta,
Yes.
who Julie and I had the honor and privilege of spending several hours with over Sunday and Monday. He was our special guest of the Seneca Projects when we went to the Webbies. He came up on Sunday and went to our little cocktail celebration with us, and then came to the event with us on Monday. What a nice person, first
And a
of all.
courageous person, because
A
he
very courageous person.
called it. Talk about a guy at CNN who called it like he saw it every
Yep.
time.
Yep.
Trump pulled his press pass. Trump tried to go after him. I'm not really
Mm-hmm.
sure what the ramifications were of that and why that may have cost him his job at CNN. I don't
I
know.
think maybe eventually, I think it just started to wear off. You know what I mean? Or like
Yeah.
it wore him down after a
Yeah.
while.
I don't know that, but what an incredible human
Mhm.
being.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right. Shout out to Jim Acosta. If you're on Substack, you should watch his show.
Mhm.
Subscribe to his Substack newsletter. He's just fantastic.
He's all integrity. He's
All integrity.
All integrity.
And here's the son of a Cuban immigrant. You know, his father came from Cuba, was under, you know, the regime there. I'm like, he knows. I mean, his mom, you know, is American, but his father, you know, I think he learned a lot from his experience in Cuba and from obviously his career as a journalist. And he's now a free man who can say whatever he wants and does whatever he wants. And, you know, I was talking to him about the what side are you on kind of feeling that I have right now. I was like, you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. There is no straddling the line here. It's one or the other. And he's like, that's how I feel right now too. And I give him props too, because Walter Walton Goggins from
Ooh.
White Lotus, you guys may know him, was sitting at the table next to us. And Jim was like, I'm going over. So
Mhm.
like we all went over and we're talking to Walton Goggins. He's another one who I think is a superb human being who was raised by all women, a single mom and his mom's sisters, like all grew up in the South. Like, what a gentleman, what a great person he is. And we were, you know, talking to him, having a great conversation about how important women are in our lives and in our country. And I said to Jim too, I thanked him. I was like, thank you for interviewing so many artists on your show, because he had Jason Isaacs on, who was also on White Lotus. And I said to him, you know, Jason Isaacs is a brilliant guy who had a lot to say about what's going on in the United States with our democracy right now. And I said, thank you for platforming artists, because I feel like, and as the resident artist here, or former actor rather, and I said, I feel like so often actors, artists are not taken seriously. We're told to go sit down and stay in your lane, like, you know, run with the ball, like people do with athletes. Like, we're Americans too. We have a right to say what we want to say. And in fact, I think a lot of artists have a very specific point of view on what's going on, because you spend your life trying to interpret or reimagine or understand or reinvent the human condition and try to understand like what's going on from a very visceral cellular vantage point. And so I got thinking about that. And then I saw Robert De Niro speak at Cannes Film Festival that's happening right now. And he always finds a way to work in the plainest language. He's such a good messenger. I think Robert De Niro is a very, very good messenger.
Yeah.
In the way that he speaks about what's going on, and speaking to an international audience also. I think, especially as a guy who's just so American. He's such an Italian American guy, so such a part of our culture in the
Icon.
United States. Yes, and we have a clip of when he talks about what's going on here, and I would love to play it.
In my country, we're fighting like hell for the democracy we once took for granted, and that affects all of us. That affects all of us here, because the arts are democratic. Art is inclusive. It brings people together. Like tonight, art looks for truth. Art embraces diversity. And that's why art is a threat. That's why we are a threat to autocrats and fascists. America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head of one of our premier cultural institutions. He has cut funding and support to the arts, humanities, and education. And now he has announced a 100% tariff on films produced outside the U.S. Let that sink in for a minute. You can't put a price on creativity, but apparently you can put a tariff on it. Of course, this is unacceptable. All these attacks are unacceptable. And this isn't just an American problem. It's a global one. Unlike a film, we can't just all sit back and watch. We have to act, and we have to act now. Without violence, but with great passion and determination. It's time for everyone who cares about liberty to organize, to protest, and when there are elections, of course, to vote.
That's right.
I try not to get, I tear up. And everything he says is so, so true. And in the vein of that, I want to give a shout out to my friends, my former classmates, who are all part of the Les Mis production at Kennedy Center, who are very, very courageously standing up to a tyrant as well, and boycotting the show that Donald Trump will be attending. So, with that said, thank you to all the men who are doing the right thing.
Agreed.
Well said. And on that note, we promised Tara we'd be off before she went on MSNBC in 1 minute. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody. Catch us on Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern for Coffee and Conversation. Maybe we'll give you a little bit more perspective on our night at the wedding. And just chill out and have a cup of coffee, mimosa, we had some good bellinis at Cipriani for the Webbies the other night. And Joe can tell us about how the Knicks kicked the Celtics.
Yes.
Right? That was an amazing epic game.
And just really quick, and speaking of the Webbies, and we just also just a very, very specific thank you to Marcus Flowers and his pack Hold the Line, which made our night at the Webbies possible. He is such a good man. He's a veteran of the Army and is always standing up to do the right thing. And he always has our back. And I just want to thank him for just such a special night that we could all celebrate the good work.
And to the good fight to Marjorie Taylor Greene a couple of cycles ago.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you on Saturday and then right back here on Wednesday at noon next week. See
And
ya.
thank you to Congressman Himes. That was awesome.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you, Congressman Himes. That was excellent. We're going to have him back because I have
Except for the Taylor Ham part. It's fine.
Central Jersey is a real thing, and I have a member of
dear.
Congress confirming it. All right, bye.